Good evening and welcome back to Church Unplugged with Shield of Faith. We are so excited and so blessed that you are joining us this evening as we are wrapping up our mental health series and mental health discussions, with it being the last week of May. I'm super honored to be joined tonight by our lead pastor, Mr. Frank McElhaney, as well as our amazing children's pastor, Carla Salazar. She is also an elementary school guidance counselor and has her master's in guidance and counseling. And we just want to say we are so excited to have her back with us. She has been recovering from surgery, but we are just praising the Lord for her and the blessing that she is and for good reports. So we love you, Carla.
Love you back. I'm so glad to be back.
Woo! My name is Jade Ruggarello. I will be your host for this evening's discussion. Before we jump in, as always, feel free to leave any comments, any questions that you have in our comment section. We love hearing from you guys. And with that said, I think we're ready to get started. How are you guys?
Great.
Good.
Doing good?
Good. Yes, great. Like good praise report. I'm so
Yes,
so glad to be
amen.
back.
Amen.
And I can say, yes, comment. We love it, y'all.
Yes.
We love the conversation. I mean, that's part of why we want to do this, is to get you guys involved in
We love interacting with y'all.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Absolutely. And hello to everyone that's watching. We're so glad you guys are joining us. So as I just alluded to, throughout this month of May, we've been, focusing on mental health, with it being National Mental Health Awareness Month. And specifically, we've been speaking on how to cope with different mental health areas. We spoke on grief. We've talked about depression, anxiety, so many different things. And tonight, we're going to focus a little bit more on dysfunctional behavior. Now, I don't know about anyone else, but I did not really know what that was or understand it until recently. So I just want to begin tonight with Carla asking if you would just elaborate on what exactly that is.
So dysfunctional behavior is a spectrum of, I hate to say disorders, but different things that may have a title or a label, a name, that is where you function differently or function in a way that may not be the social norm of things. It also could be known as like maladaptive behavior, but really and truly that just means that your behaviors are not adapted to the way that the social norms of things. So I think that it gets a real yucky connotation, but really and truly it just means that you function in a different way, and it could not. There are some unhealthy ways that people function in their behavior. Dysfunctional behaviors with the Y, babe.
Oh, my bad.
Okay. He had spelled it out, like coping with dysfunctional behavior, and it's spelled with a Y. Which I'm probably dyslexic, so for me to catch that is a miracle. I'm just saying. So yeah, no, and when you look at like I want to say symptoms, but like the different behavior indicators of different dysfunctional behavior, a lot of times whenever a doctor or a therapist or a psychologist identifies those, it has to be 2 or more of, or like a certain amount for a certain amount of time. So It can go from a wide range of ADHD, anxiety, OCD, eating disorders, conduct disorders, mood disorders, psychosis, like bipolar, people having tics, mood disorders, which kind of range into like the depression, all of that is a wide variety of dysfunctional behavior.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, and you just alluded to, Carla has this amazing Padlet, I believe it's called, right? That she shared with me. And did you create that? It was part of your grad school?
It was my dysfunctional behavior course. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Like I took a whole course on just dysfunctional behavior, which is crazy.
Wow.
Like in grad school, yeah.
Yeah, and even just what you said, there's such a wide
Spectrum.
Well,
and I totally probably have, when I say probably, I haven't been diagnosed with a doctor, but I check out all the boxes for ADHD. And when I was like, what? I have a dysfunctional behavior? Because in my mind, I thought dysfunctional behavior was a very serious mental health thing. It's not. It's just not functioning in a completely in a certain way. And I can say that ADHD for me, I do a lot of the crazy, I hate to say crazy. I shouldn't say it that way. I'm forgetful. I lose things. I wreck cars. I, get myself into a lot of trouble. I don't pay attention. I forget sentences. I forget conversations. I say things very impulsively and then wish I never said them. Like those things that check all those boxes. And I'm super hyperactive and I get up and move all the time. But I didn't think of those as being dysfunctional. But really and truly, those are things that people can lose their job for some of the things that I think I've done just in life. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I've learned how to accommodate for some of those behaviors.
Right. Would you like to add anything, Pastor, before?
I'm listening.
You're listening, Pastor?
I just want to know how many cars.
If mom and dad are watching, how many cars have I wrecked? 1, 2, 3,
Let us know.
4, 3? 3? I think 3. If my parents are watching, probably I've totaled 3, maybe 4 cars. And every one of my cars is bumped up somewhere. Like even my car that I have now. It's terrible. It's terrible.
We're very glad that you were okay.
Me too. Praise God.
So you touched a little bit. Were you going to say something, Pastor?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, I understand the term dysfunctional to mean different, not necessarily bad.
Right.
And I want to, some of the things that you'll talk about aren't necessarily a negative thing in your life. They actually can be, they can add positive to your life.
I agree.
So it might make you who you are as opposed to some things that, and so there's just a lot of things that people do. And I know that in growing up, there was a normal group, and then there was a group that was not normal, abnormal. So you had to do certain things to be in the normal group, and if you fell outside of that, then you were in an abnormal group. So, so dysfunctional is something that I actually would take issue with the word because
I don't blame you.
and the way it's said, because it's given a negative connotation when it doesn't necessarily mean that. So that's just like ADD or ADHD. I've seen parents with children that their child was diagnosed as being ADHD, and they are a basket case. The kid's fine.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yes.
thinking, one lady, I'm thinking, well, you don't, your child doesn't need help as much as you do, but I didn't tell her that. But she was pretty freaked out about it. So some of the things that you say when you call them dysfunctional can be that can be a scary thing to someone, especially a mother with children or father with children. You can, where it's not necessarily have to be. You need to sit down and listen to the whole conversation.
That's true. Well, and I think too, and I think that's why whenever I was taking that course, I was like, wait a minute, I function fine, right? Like, and I think that a lot of times we do, like we accommodate for things that normally, for example, social anxiety, right? Like people can really have social anxiety, and that's okay.
Right.
There are things that they do to accommodate for themselves, or people that they have in their lives that give them some comfort and relief. And so I think more than anything, it's okay. I want it to be more of a, don't freak out if, or don't get upset if you find yourself in a situation where your doctor or your counselor or a psychiatrist or even the school is telling you that your child or that you are showing indicators of one of these behaviors, right, or one of these labels, right? Because you can find ways of coping and find ways of overcoming. I know for me, right, I do a lot of things all day long to accommodate for the behaviors that I know don't function like everyone else. I'm late to everything. So there are things that I have to do, like apologize 50 million times, and also know in my mind, okay, if I tell myself 15 minutes before, I probably will get there on time. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Or I have to make lists, or I have to keep a calendar, and I miss things that I shouldn't miss if it's not on my Google Calendar. Like, I won't remember.
I won't remember, yes.
No, not at all. But those are okay. Like, I think I function. I mean, I'm going for my second grad school, you know, like I'm grad school again. Like, I already have a grad school degree. I graduated from college. I graduated from high school. I function in a job well, and I do okay. Like, you know, like, amazing. I'm like, so I think that I want to show it as a testament of you know, you can go beyond what
and I think
the negative connotation.
Right, and that's, you know, one of the reasons, and throughout this entire month that we've really, one of our goals has been, is it's a good reminder to people that there's nothing wrong with you. You know what I mean? And I think that's part of the big stigma surrounding all of mental health is people hear this, whether it's about them or their child or whoever, and like you said, they can tend to freak out a little bit and think, oh my goodness, and they see it as a negative thing, and it's not, and like you said, there are some amazing ways that you can cope.
And one of the things we need to keep in mind too is that those that live a Christian lifestyle are not exempt from any of these behaviors.
Yes.
This does, you know, this is for people. If you're a Christian and you're struggling with these things, you just need to realize that doesn't mean there's something terribly wrong with you or you didn't do anything wrong. So there's a whole side of this, and I think one of the things that's always good with these talks when we have Carla is she always gives us some coping skills, and those things are cool. Now, I couldn't follow along with that first group, 3 things and 1 thing and 2 things. So my ADD was gone a little bit quick, so I lost it. But the fact is I'm the same way. I have ADD, and I'm an adult, and so I have to use coping skills that I've come up with myself. Actually, you know, one of the things that you were talking about before, I like to write stuff down. If I write it down, it's like somebody just put a patch on my brain somewhere. Right. So if I write it down, and then, you know, of course, riding my motorcycle, but if I'm by myself, it's if I'm with a group, it's much better controlled than if I'm by myself, because I tend to change where I'm going, you know.
End up in some awesome
somewhere else, you know, cool place, you know.
I love it.
And that, but if I'm with a group, then you have to go with the group, and so it's been, you know, I'm just saying that, you know, everybody's gonna say their pastor has ADD now, but really it doesn't it doesn't detract from who I am.
No, not at all.
Absolutely.
Well, and it's really funny because you're a pretty chill guy, and I'm way on the other end of hyper, but yet we struggle with some of the similar things, and I think that's an interesting thing too.
But see, I've learned to chill. You've got about 30 more years to chill.
I don't know if Carla, I was about to say.
I'm like Alvin from Alvin and the Chipmunks. Like, I'm like always doing something.
Yes.
Yeah, I had to learn to chill.
Well, and Carla, you touched on this a little bit already, just some of with your own experience. But what I wanted to kind of ask, what are some ways that people can be affected by some of these behaviors, whether it's ADHD or I mean, there's such, as you said, such a wide spectrum. You know, what are some, and like you said, I don't want to call them symptoms, but just some ways that people
behavior indicators.
Yeah, indicators. That's a good way of putting it.
I think that sometimes, like, it depends on, you know, what it is. I mean, you can go from like depression where people are in bed all day long and they've, you know, lost contact with family and friends, and they're not finding joy in, you know, the things that they used to find joy in, to like anxiety where you don't want to go to a certain place, or OCD where, you know, you have to do, some people have to do like specific things in order, or touch the doorknob 3 times, like in order to get that anxious feeling out of,
Right.
you know, their brain and body. And so I think that it depends, right? And so that can affect your life in a ton of different ways. And it depends on the person, right? Like, I think different people either make light of it, or really it can severely
Absolutely.
cause a person to feel really bad
Yeah,
about themselves.
it can. It can.
And make them feel like, I think that that's part of why we do what we do here, even, is talk about it, because I think sometimes you go, I want to do that too. Like, you know, or
You feel
and then
less alone.
Yeah, you feel isolated and alone. Like, I'm the only one that doesn't find joy in X, Y, and Z. Or, I mean, honestly, like, when I dealt with postpartum, I did not find joy in motherhood. And that felt awful, y'all.
Yeah.
Like, I loved my baby. Like, don't get me wrong, he's the cutest thing ever since the history of always. But, like, I didn't find, actually, I found so much angst in it. I hated it. I hated every part of motherhood, the responsibility itself. I remember telling my mom, I called her, like, I was at the hospital, and I was like, I have to be responsible for this person. And do I hate admitting that? Yes, absolutely. And did I feel that with my girls? No, I didn't. But my chemicals were completely off in my body. You know,
Yeah.
like, my body was not doing what it was supposed to be doing. And so I think that that's the thing to keep in mind, is we don't make ourselves feel that guilty when our blood sugar's off. You know?
Exactly.
And we don't make
That's
ourselves
good.
feel that guilty when we're struggling with pain in our body in a certain place. But yet the fact that I didn't find joy in motherhood, I felt like the worst person in the world.
Yes.
In the world. But I realized that my chemicals were off. And thank God Janet was like, hey, did you know that, you know, certain omega, like, you could have a deficiency in certain things. And I started taking these vitamins, and that is what changed my body dynamics. But it took a year.
Yeah.
Like, it
Yeah.
took a long time.
Yeah.
It wasn't a battle that ended like this.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that's an important reminder sometimes, is, you know, it may not go away overnight, and oftentimes it doesn't go away overnight. And sometimes and as you said, it's a continuing journey, and it's a continuous, you know, fight that you kind of have to put up. And I love that you said that, you know, people, they don't feel guilty if their blood sugar's off, or they don't feel guilty for physical ailments that they have that aren't in their mind. And that's just such an important reminder that, you know, your mind it's a part of your body, and it's something that deserves the same care and respect that you would give to any other functioning part.
Well, and so I had a kiddo that came, there's a couple of cases that I want to talk to you guys about. One was a kiddo that came into my office that had a thyroid issues. And honestly, I had to keep reminding that kiddo that they did struggle with their thyroid, because with thyroid issues either comes anxiety or depression or both, because the body hormones and chemicals
all connected.
are off.
Yeah.
Yes. And so they come in like a major depressive state. And the first thing that I would ask is, hungry, thirsty, and then, are you taking your medicine the way that you're supposed to? Because that totally affected their brain and body. That's one. The other one I wanted to throw out there that I thought was really interesting, because a lot of times people associate eating disorders. I know that eating disorders are a part of mental health. I had a kiddo one time that had choked on something, and that's how they developed their eating disorder. And it was a legit anxiety eating disorder, and we have to watch them eat. Like, and so if they didn't finish in a certain time, they would go to either my office or the nurse's office to watch finish their food, because they had to make weight. And then when they had to make weight, the anxiety would go through the roof because of having to make a certain weight, so they didn't have to take any more types of supplements. So I want people to understand that sometimes our behaviors, that there is that tie between our bodies and our brains, and it kind of all is intertwined together. And so that stigma of mental health, let it go a little bit.
Yes,
You know?
absolutely.
Like, because we don't hold that same guilt with physical health.
Of course.
You know, I want to just say that I've seen people with so-called mental health disorders. We've had them in church here, and they still respond to the Lord.
Oh, yeah.
And
I don't know what I would have done without the Lord.
even with,
Amen.
and even one of the things that has helped me over the years is God just somehow gets a hold of me and tells me everything's going to be okay. Because on the other side of ADHD is an anxiety, and so just like you're talking about the person that was anxious about eating enough. I mean, anxiety itself is enough to deal with, much less trying to, it's so when you find yourself in a position where, or somebody you love in a position where you do that, don't try to tell them there's nothing wrong with them. You know what I mean?
Right.
Help them find a way to cope with what they're dealing with. And sometimes there's not much you can say or do, but then in other cases, like what you were talking about, good vitamin regimen, good
Right.
Things that you can do. It just depends on what the issue is, but God will help you, and especially I believe if you'll just take time to listen, because that's what God used to do to me. Every once in a while, He would just tell me everything's going to be okay, and when I heard that, it was a calm down immediately kind of thing.
Like
Until
that
then,
peace.
Right.
till then, I'd be so anxious about something, and then in the evening, the Lord would speak to me. He says, everything's going to be okay. And then, I didn't care what it was. I knew everything was going to be okay.
fine.
Right.
That'd mean I could get some sleep, I could get some rest. And so when I got up in the morning, I had a sense of, a better sense about everything was. Because you can go through days and days with this, with struggling
Yes.
and struggling. And that's what's really hard for people
Right.
is, I guess the word I would use is wanting to have a little breathing room.
Yes, yes. No, that's true.
That's very true.
Yeah, in a second to just go, and be able to take that breath that it's going to
course.
be, that it's going to be okay.
Of course. Well, and I love that you said that, Pastor, because that's a perfect segue into, what I wanted to mention, and we've touched on it a little bit tonight. So, what are some ways, if somebody watching, has a loved one that may be experiencing this right now, but they don't necessarily know how to approach it, or some ways of support, what would be your encouragement or your advice to them?
I think it depends on what it is. The buddy system is amazing. Like making sure that you're exercising, making sure that you're eating right, making sure that
Right.
you're taking care of your body is huge. So if you're worried that someone in your household is struggling and you walk beside them and start doing those things with them, taking a walk, getting outside, getting some sun. But sometimes we have to ask tough questions that are uncomfortable.
Yes.
And that are
Hard conversations, yeah.
Yes, and I think that one of the things, and especially with postpartum, more than anything else that I had to deal with, I had to say some things out loud
Yeah.
that I was really scared of saying. And once I said them, it was like, wait a minute, that monster wasn't as big as what I thought it was once I said it out loud.
Right.
And then I was like, oh goodness, that, wow. So I think finding people that, being a place of being willing to hear those things, and I hate to say without reacting, but sometimes we have to hear things, tough things from people, and be like, okay, I'm gonna stand with you.
Well, I think that is part of the stigma that exists is people are so afraid of judgment and afraid
Yes.
of being, considered crazy. They
Right.
think that these things are negative, and I think that's such an important reminder to don't judge. It's be in a safe space for them and with an open heart and an open mind.
And when I was a child in school, it was a long time ago, but if you were different, you were bullied.
Yeah.
And so it wouldn't make any difference what you called it. You just got bullied. And so there was, I never liked bullies in my whole life. But the thing that people are trying to do now is, for years we tried to define normal in a different way.
Yeah.
And we don't use the name or that term as much, but we still look for it.
Yeah.
And so especially young people, they need to fit in. They need to be a part of a social group.
Right.
And I mean a healthy social group, not the ones that are doing the stuff that is making everything worse, but a group that they don't have to feel like they're a safe group, like they can
Right.
talk and they can share. And sometimes you have to realize very few people can say hard words to you and you'll listen.
Yeah.
So some of the
That's true.
people
That's good.
you may be one of the people that can speak into someone's life, so you need to step up to that responsibility sometimes and do it.
Right.
I know I've had to do that to one of my daughters. Actually, I only have one.
One of my daughters.
But
Tanya,
We know
that's
which one.
the thing.
do we need to know?
I have several granddaughters, but I've had to do that, and she's actually done that with me.
Yeah.
I mean, she's actually said, "Dad,
Yes.
there's something wrong here,"
Yes.
and I'm like, no, there's not, And so,
Well, and I
and
think-
that you can be the one that can say out loud,
Yes.
"This is what you need to do," and you need to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's true.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think, and I can't speak for everyone, but I think that, there's a lot of times people are in a state of denial because they don't, they don't want to acknowledge it, or they may not really understand how. They may not know what's happening,
Right.
or why they're feeling the way they're feeling. And sometimes just having someone there that says, it's okay. We don't have to figure everything out. Just know I'm here.
Exactly.
Just
Yeah.
know I'm here for you. And if you want to go out and get lunch together, if you want to go get coffee, it's good for people. Sometimes people just want to know they're not alone.
Right.
And because, as you said, it can be a very isolating
Feeling.
thing. Yeah.
Or you just say, "Hey, let's go get something to eat." And, you don't ever sometimes people don't want to talk. The thing is I remember a gentleman who he had 3 businesses, and in 1 year all 3 businesses were cratering.
Oh.
And so he went into a severe depression,
Yes.
and he had to be hospitalized. And so his mother actually went to the place and talked to him, and but she just always treated him like her son. She didn't treat him like there was really something
Right.
wrong with him. And of course, after he got right with the Lord, well, all of this stuff started working again.
Yes.
So he actually wound up being in the ministry. But the thing is that some of the things, like, I lived all my life until my adult life without knowing I had ADD, and I had a couple other things, but they were, and then I know a guy that was, they treated for depression for a long time, and it wound out he wasn't depressed, he was anxious. So
Yes.
they had to,
Yes.
it was like for 10 years. So then once they twitched, so you just have to learn to be able to talk about who you are
Yes.
with other people, and without the negative connotation.
Yes.
I agree.
Because
Yes.
people will go and talk about their high blood pressure or
Yes.
diabetes or all of that kind of stuff. Well, maybe there's something you can say sometimes about, well, this is what I deal with.
Yes.
And you'd be surprised at people who deal with things that are, that doesn't mean you can't have a good career. It doesn't mean you can't do anything.
Right.
It doesn't mean you can't have a
Absolutely.
family. It just means there's just stuff you're going to have to take care of differently.
Yes, and be okay with who you are. Well, and I think on a parenting standpoint too, I think when your kids are struggling with mental health things, you feel this like guilt as a parent that they're struggling, like you've done something wrong in your parenting.
Right.
But you wouldn't feel that way if they had high blood pressure. You wouldn't feel that way if,
It's true.
you know, like if
Absolutely.
they were dealing with migraines, you wouldn't feel that way. You'd be like, let's figure out what's going on.
Because you can't control it.
Yes. And I think that that's the thing is that that's the hard part is that kids really are struggling and they just need someone to stand beside them and be there with them and know that someone's present for them versus feeling guilty. And I get it because I'm a parent too and I feel guilty all the time, like for everything. But like I want to encourage you guys, moms and dads, when your kids are struggling with things that have to do with mental health, it's not your fault.
Yes.
Like more times than not, that's not it. Let's get them some help, right? And when I say help, I mean, there's an array of things. They have doctors, they do have counselors, and I just had a friend tell me today that there's like, I'm trying so hard to find a counselor and it's so hard. It is right now.
Yeah.
There's
They're
a lot
needed.
of people.
Yes, they're
yes,
needed,
there
yeah.
are a lot of people that are struggling with their mental health and there are waiting lists. And so just know you're not alone and reach out to us. We want to be there for you guys. Reach out to your people. They want to be there with you guys. And it's interesting that once you say something out loud, more times than not, somebody else feels that way
Yes.
or has struggled with that thing. And it's just that you said it out loud. And then they're like, yes, you know, I've been there, you know.
And always remember that there's a much wider range about people than that you can be aware of than just a behavior that they have.
That's true.
Of course.
And that is just one of the things that is interesting. I've met some people over the years that were unique in the sense of who they were. And they were perfectly okay with who they were, and they didn't have a lot of use for other things. But when you sat down and talked to them, they have been through a lot of stuff over the years
Yes.
to be able to be okay with, you know, where they were in their life.
Nope, that's true.
And a lot of times we, especially with children, you know, I always encourage parents, encourage your children. They don't know they can't do anything.
That's true.
They can do anything. Don't tell them any different. They're liable to wind up doing something great. So
Yes.
just encourage them. Yes, you can. Boys and girls.
And they're more okay with being who they are than what people realize.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Like that was really interesting.
Yes.
One of the things that I did I did it for a couple of years. I didn't do it this year. But I would give our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders their personality tests. And it was interesting because I thought they would all be personalities that would be considered fun, for lack of a better. No, they were honest about who they are, and they actually appreciated the idea of, no, I'm an introvert, Miss Salazar. Like I you know, or no,
Yeah,
I believe
that's
in
interesting.
like the real, like I have to sense things out, or no, I like rule. Like they'll look at me and they're like, no, I like rules. You stress me out, and I'm like, okay, like
You're like, sorry.
but the fact that they're okay with being who they are, and I think I appreciate that more than anything because I think sometimes people expect them to want to be something that they're not, and they really
kind
are
of
okay
conform,
with being
yeah.
That comes after you get to be an adult.
Yes, yes,
That comes after you get to be an adult.
yes.
But especially the young people and the kids are a lot better at coping with things than we give them credit for.
Yes.
And you know, one lady, she had a son who had ADD, and we went on a camping trip. There's a bunch of us went on a camping trip, so we came back, and she was just wanted to find out how her son did and everything, you know, and her son did fine. I told her, I said, the only thing wrong with your son is he's a boy.
Yes.
And he's just going to do boy things. You know, he likes the same thing everybody else does. You know, he's just, and once he got off and out there with, you know, making a campfire. I ain't seen a boy yet that didn't like to make a campfire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, making a
Truth
campfire,
talk.
putting up the tent.
Yes.
You know, and
Oh,
we
the
didn't put the
fire.
tents up for them. They had to put the tents up themselves and
Yes.
and all of that kind of stuff. Once they got to doing that kind of stuff, he just fell in with everybody. Didn't make all of his issues go away, but for about 48 hours, he had a blast. And so, you know, that's the thing that we need to realize a lot of times is give kids a chance to do good. Give them a chance to
Right.
shine.
That opportunity, yes, I agree.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're about to close out tonight. Would you guys like to add any last comments? Any?
No, I mean, I appreciate getting to do like stuff on mental health. I think it's
Absolutely.
important.
Absolutely.
It's vitally important.
Yeah,
And-
I think
and-
it's important.
As always, you know, we are so blessed that you joined us, and we just want you to know how loved you are, how much you matter,
Yes.
how thankful we are that you joined us this month and every week.
Yes.
And it looks like Sister Gail said, I drive people crazy because I'm a rule follower.
We love it.
We-
And the
we
best
love it.
hugger in the world.
Yes, we miss those hugs.
I'm just saying.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much once again for joining us. Don't forget to join us next Wednesday night at 7 o'clock for our next episode. I want to thank Pastor and Pastor Carla for joining us this evening. They are amazing. We always love getting to hear what they have to say. With that, I believe we are going to close out. Don't forget to like us here on Facebook, follow us over on Instagram. We love interacting with you guys, and we hope that you all have a very blessed rest of your week. Good night, everyone.
Night, y'all.